Cool. So just out of curiosity, were any of you at the talk that I gave back in October in Hilton Head?
Yeah.
One? A couple? Okay, good. Well, that talk was called How to Build a Kick-Ass Life, and it went pretty well. So I figured I'd just roll with it. So now we're going to talk about something that is more related to my career, which is branding. I mean, I've spent the past 30 years schooling myself on branding. And I refer to brand as like the rising tide that floats all boats. When you create a great brand for your company, it just makes everything easier, whether it's like hiring or sales or social media, customer support. Everything just gets easier when you've got a great brand. And so I'm going to share with you guys today the simple formula I've used to create a lot of brands. A little bit about myself. So I guess, and I normally don't even talk about myself when I give talks, but just for some semblance of credibility, I guess my claim to fame in the branding world is I'm the only chief marketing officer who has rebranded 3 public companies. So I've been a CMO 4 times for big companies. I've founded 4 companies with a few exits. And so I only say that to say I've done a lot of stuff, and I've built brands for startups. I've built brands for multi-billion-dollar companies, everything in between. So I've learned everything the hard way. So hopefully you won't have to. And so we're going to talk about 3 things today. First, we'll do a level set on what a brand is, because I would bet you anything, if I asked every single one of you what is a brand, every person would give a different answer. So we'll talk a little bit about what a brand is. And then I'll share my secret formula for creating brands. It's deceptively simple. And I'll walk through a really cool case study of a project that I did. And then finally, I wanted to make it actionable. So we'll end with like 5 quick hit tactics that I'm kind of obsessed with for driving sales and building your own brand. Okay, so branding 101. Let's talk a little bit about what a brand is. But before we even get into a brand, my entire approach to, I mean, I've been a marketer my entire career for like 30 years. My entire approach to marketing was informed by a book called The Purple Cow. Has anybody heard of The Purple Cow? A couple people. Yeah. It came out like 20 years ago. It's like an 80-page book, so even I can make it through the book. Highly recommend it. But the basic idea in Purple Cow is he tells this story where you're driving down a country road and you see a herd of cows out in a pasture. And all the cows look the same, so you don't really take notice of any one cow, you just see a herd. Then again, you're driving down that same country road, you see a herd of cows, one of them is bright purple, you only see the bright purple cow, you don't even see the herd. So the basic idea is the best marketing, the best way to make people aware of what you do and to sell things is to build a remarkable product. And I mean remarkable in the true sense of the word. Remarkable basically means worthy of being talked about. So it creates kind of a wow experience. My favorite example of a Purple Cow product is this. Who knows what brand this is? That's right, Le Creuset, the cookware company. You recognize that just from their distinctive colors and the cookware lids. But Le Creuset's got a really interesting history. The company was founded in 1925. And when the company launched, they only had one color that they offered in their cookware. Who can guess what color was the first color that Le Creuset offered? Black? Surprisingly, it wasn't. It was actually flame, this second color here. The point I'm trying to make is Le Creuset's cookware is awesome. Like we use it at home. You can pass it down through generations. It is a great product, but they didn't stop at just creating a great product. They went kind of nuts with the colors. And that kind of became what I call a signature move. So that's Le Creuset's signature move is I think they offer like 50 colors right now. And that took what could have been a great business regardless. It turned it into a remarkable product. And now it's become an iconic brand. And that's really the goal. And the benefits of being remarkable versus just good are huge. So I saw this on social media the other day on Twitter. And I know you can't read the details, but someone said, "Babe, wake up, Le Creuset 2025 color guide just dropped." So it's literally worth talking about. This one Twitter post got 200,000 likes, like 50,000 retweets. I bet they sold a lot of cookware through this one free ad. And that's one of who knows how many, were on Instagram and TikTok and so on. That's what happens when you create a Purple Cow product. So back to the question I posed, which is what is a brand? A lot of people think a brand is like a logo. Like if you go to someone on the street, you say, what's a brand? They'd probably say it's a logo, like the Nike swoosh or something. Or they might say it's a name or it's an advertisement. And it's actually none of those things. The best explanation I've ever seen for what a brand is was given by this guy, Seth Godin, who wrote the Purple Cow book. So I'm going to let him say it because he can say it way better than me. So let's watch this video for just a second.
I like this. So let's talk about the difference between a logo and a brand, right? Because companies spend way too much time on their logo. Just like people on YouTube spend way too much time on their hair. I'm told they spend way too much time on their hair. If Nike opened a hotel, I think we would be able to guess pretty accurately what it would be like. If Hyatt came out with sneakers, we'd have no clue. Because Hyatt doesn't have a brand. They have a logo. If I swapped the signs on a hotel at that price point, you couldn't tell. If you were in Marriott, if you were in Hilton, Hyatt, the hallway, the room, I don't know, where am I?
I'm going to stop it there just for time. But I think that's a really great litmus test for, do you have a brand or a logo? Can your brand translate to another category and your customers could actually imagine how it would behave in that category? Later in the video, he goes on to say that a brand is a promise. And the way I like to think of it is a brand is just behaviors of your company. And ideally, you're behaving really consistently so that your behavior becomes predictable. That's when you know you've got a brand. You heard the term on brand before? Like someone will say like a person is on brand or does something on brand or a company does something on brand. All that means is they're behaving in a consistent way that you would expect. I saw this ad the other day. I don't know if you guys watch tennis, but Madison Keys, the American tennis player, just won her first Grand Slam, the Australian Open, and Nike ran this ad. You'll notice in this ad, there's no logos from Nike. They don't have their name, and it's on her shirt. But other than that, but you know it's Nike, right? You can look at this ad and you immediately know it's Nike because it's on brand. The way it looks, the way the messaging works, Nike has a brand, so you can imagine how that would translate to other categories. The key here is brands are actually built, most people think you build a brand by spending a lot of money on advertising, and that's not it at all. Brands are built through your behaviors. It's actions, not ads. So your behavior is consistent, customers become familiar with it, and over time you develop a brand. So let's apply this litmus test to the Purple Cow brand that I mentioned, which is Le Creuset. Can you imagine if like Le Creuset did a collab with Nike? I can. I mean, they're a pretty cool brand. In fact, I used AI to imagine that. It would actually be pretty cool. Like you can imagine a collaboration between Nike and because they've got these cool colors. I mean, I'd probably wear these shoes. So Le Creuset passes the litmus test. They have a brand. So why does branding work? And it's a very simple reason, because humans are emotional creatures. At the end of the day, we do factor in the functional aspects of a product or service we buy. But at the end of the day, we make decisions with our heart. We buy stories. And this ad, I don't know if you can see it, it's from a legendary advertising firm called Crispin Porter Bogusky. And it makes the case for stories over features. You've got a hitchhiker on the left who says, to Jacksonville, and on the right it says, what does it say? To moms for Christmas. Which one do you think is more likely to get picked up as a hitchhiker? It's the one that tugs at the heartstrings. It's the story. And of course, the gold standard for branding and storytelling is Apple. Some of you are probably too young to remember like when the original iPod came out. But at the time, the iPod was not the first digital music player on the market. There was tons of music. They called them MP3 players, if you remember that. And they always used to market like, this one has so many gigs of RAM, and it has a screen this big, and it's got this many headphone ports. Apple did none of that stuff. They just come out and say, every song you've ever owned in your pocket, end of story. Where do I send my money? Like the rest is history. All right, so everybody have a good sense of what a brand was, maybe a little bit different than you were thinking. Now we're gonna get into my super secret formula for building great brands, and it's deceptively simple, hard to do though. So it's 3 steps. So number 1 is figure out what makes your company remarkable. What makes your company or your product a purple cow? And I would say, if you've had any success as a company, there is something that is special about your company. There's something in your DNA that made you special that is, it's the reason customers are paying you to do what you do. And sometimes it's hard to uncover what that one special thing is. I call it the brand idea, but that's the first step. And then the second step is, I say crank it up to 11. So once you figure out what makes you special, it should be apparent in everything you do. The way you look, the way you behave, the way your employees are treated, everything. And then last, most people think of branding as number 3, which is like spread the word, buy advertising. That's actually the easiest part. Once you've got a purple cow product, telling the world about it becomes the easy part. In fact, if you're truly remarkable, just like Le Creuset, your customers will tell the world about it for you. So I'm going to walk you guys through a case study, and I always put way too much in these presentations, so I'm going to move really fast. But this is probably like the coolest project I've ever had the luxury of doing. Um, at the beginning of the pandemic, a friend of mine introduced me to a new CEO who had come to run this bank in Hawaii called Central Pacific Bank. You've never heard of it, but it's a household name in Hawaii. It's a $7 billion asset bank, so a pretty big public company. They'd hired a new CEO to kind of bring the bank into the future. It was like kind of lagging its peers. And so we undertook this. I got hired to be the CMO to help Paul, the CEO, and we undertook this major modernization project. Now, we spent a lot of money. I want to point out as I go, everything I'm saying today applies to a $1 billion company. It applies to a $100,000 company or a person. All these tactics are the same. One interesting thing, so I went over during the pandemic and worked in Hawaii. Do you notice, if you can see the image here, this is the executive team. Do you notice anything unusual about that picture? I'm the only white guy on the executive team. So they call me a haole in Hawaii. But it's a very, Hawaii is almost like working in a different country. And it was very unusual to be, for one time, like I'm used to working on executive teams, it's all white guys. And I was the only one in this case. And yet I'm supposed to be the one telling the company's story. So I have to say, this was the best gig ever. Like I'm pretty selective in the assignments I take on. I was able to go during the pandemic, I was able to go to Hawaii, and I was classified as an essential worker. So I could basically go anywhere I wanted during the lockdowns. I didn't take advantage of that, of course. But it was amazing. I'm a rock climber, and there's great rock climbing on Oahu. My kids were not in school because of the pandemic. So it was like, we look back on this time as like the best time in our lives. Hopefully we'll be able to duplicate it someday. But let's start with step one. What's remarkable about this company? Well, when I went to Hawaii just to even meet with the company, I would talk to people in my Ubers, and it's a household name brand in Hawaii, and people were over the top in love with this brand, and they had told me that it had a net promoter score of 90. If you guys know what a net promoter score, which is that's like higher than Apple, and I was like, there's no way. But when I talked to customers, I would just hear these stories over and over about this. Like, how could a bank be anything special? Banks are terrible, and a lot of it came from just the origin story. So when you're trying to figure out what makes your company remarkable, start with your origin story. There's a reason you started the company or that you work at the company. It was probably to like scratch some sort of itch. And in this case, it's a great origin story. So after World War II, so imagine Pearl Harbor happens, World War II happens. You're a Japanese American living in Hawaii. That's a pretty bad place to be. The American banks would not serve Japanese American customers in Hawaii. They couldn't get a bank. So they literally passed the hat and $5 and $10 at a time raised money to start this bank, which is now a $7 billion bank 60 years later. Incredible. Because of that origin story, this idea of caring for their customers like their family is in their DNA. And that's very unusual for a bank. And that was our core insight, right? Is that this idea of humanity that's coming from a bank. Like you would never, like we hate banks. I hate banks. Can you imagine Wells Fargo referring to themselves as a bank with humanity? Like, no. This bank can pull it off. And so the core brand idea we came up with, this is like the purple cow idea, was what we called radically human. Very simple, but radical was a conscious choice. The humanity is in their DNA. Let's take it to a radical degree. And whenever I do a rebrand, I like to create a video that kind of captures the essence of like when we say radically human, what do we mean? So I'm going to show you, it's just a 1-minute video. Keep in mind that the context here was this was during the pandemic, so there was a lot of fear and uncertainty going on, which was great timing for us, and you'll see that in the results.
Fear can bring out the worst in people. Tragedy can take what we hold dear. Technology can cause isolation. But humanity gives us hope. Humanity brings out the best in people. Humanity brings us together. So when the world suddenly seems so uncertain, so radically challenging, radically different, now is the time to say something other banks can't say. Now is the time to be something other banks can't be. Now is the time to be radically human.
So can you feel what radically human might feel like? You could probably already start imagining what that brand might look like and how it might behave. Um, Something in the video that was really important, to be something other banks can't be. Ideally, your core brand idea is unique. It's something that your competitors would really struggle to credibly claim for themselves. So that's step one. We figured out what is special about this company or this product. Number two is crank it up to 11. So what we mean by that is radically human should be embedded in every single thing that you do, the way you look, the way you behave, everything. So I'm going to breeze through this because I'm worried about running out of time. But what does radically human look like? You probably can already imagine it in your head, but it probably doesn't look a lot like most banks. So where we started when I came to Central Pacific Bank, this was how it looked, right? Like every other bank. It was kind of a race for the bottom. I was hired to basically change this. And so we had a design insight. And I'm going to geek out a little bit on design because I'm passionate about it. But our design insight, if you go to Honolulu, you'll notice because of when it became a state, when Hawaii became a state, there's a ton of mid-century modern design. I'm a sucker for mid-century modern design. So that influenced us heavily, is this idea of like mid-century modernists would fit right in with a Hawaiian vibe. And so we started really simple. So we took the word mark is very simple and plain, strong. We lifted it from a logo that was used in the branches in the 1960s. But then we began to modernize it. We chose a color palette that came from the natural resources of Hawaii. So names like Midnight, Hibiscus, Papaya, Pacific, Plumeria. Then we commissioned an illustrator in Bali to create custom illustrations that we would use everywhere. So the North Shore wave, the koi fish with a nod to Japanese culture, the humpback whale, which is a good luck symbol, and of course the Maneki Neko cat. We added a shaka sign. This became a huge hit, this illustration, because there's a lot of the customers of this particular bank are Japanese because of the origin. And so we started to apply that design system to everything. Our mantra was back to this idea of radical humanity. We said other banks use technology to become less human. Like Wells Fargo, they want to do everything they can to avoid actually helping you. And so their technology is like, here's the stuff you need. We wanted to go the opposite direction. We wanted to bring the technology to life and make it easy to use. And we want customers to come into our branches. That's where we build relationships. So you can see how we applied this design system to cards, ATMs, the Aloha shirts that people wear in the branch locations, interior design, it's comprehensive. That's the visual part of it. But then the more interesting thing is the actions and the ads. So how do you start getting the word out? And we did do some TV. I generally don't do TV ads because I think it's kind of a dying medium. Hawaii is a unique market. It's a captive market. So we created, I think these are the best ads I've ever created in my career. And they're also the simplest. These cost like $10,000 a piece to produce, which is not much. Well, all we did, because we had so much love from customers, we did man on the street interviews to get stories of radical humanity from our customers. And then we used our illustration style that we developed to put a fun illustration to it. And all we did, we said, look, the easiest way to explain what radical humanity is, because it's not a tagline, the easiest way to explain it is just tell simple stories of what it looks like to be human. So here's a great example that everybody in this room, I guarantee you, can relate to because it speaks to the reason banks piss us off, right? Simple little things they do to piss us off.
So I opened this account with this other bank, and I told the guy, okay. So I go, I need a roll of quarters. And he goes, I'm sorry, I can't give you that. He goes, no, you have to have a business account. I'm like, whoa, what? So I said, okay, I want to close my account. And he looked at me, I go, I'm serious. And I closed the account, and that was that. I just walk into CPB, go, I need to roll quarters, and no problem. Everybody's smiling, and I walk out.
So it could not be more simple. That's a real customer. You can hear the Hawaiian accent. And it's he just wanted a freaking roll of quarters, and the bank wouldn't give it to him. So he shut down his account and went to CPB. There's countless stories like that. I'm going to show you one more because I just can't help myself. This one's called All G. And the executive team at the bank did not want to release this ad because you'll see that the ad is done in Pidgin English, which is the local Hawaiian dialect. Pidgin English is generally associated with the poorer Hawaiians. So they were afraid that it would take our brand in the wrong direction. We launched it anyway. This became a viral sensation. It got everybody on the island saw this ad. And you'll see it's impossible not to like this ad. This is another customer. 15-second ad.
If you get hard time understand bank language, you should come to Central Pacific Bank because you're going to multiple everything that they're telling you. They're going to help you understand and gonna be cherry. Gonna be all good, all G.
So funny.
Central Pacific Bank.
You know, I have no idea what the hell he even said, but it's pretty funny and very, very likable. And so these ads, like I said, normally I'm not a big fan of TV. Hawaii's a unique market. These ads crushed it, absolutely crushed it. They were being shared socially. But I mentioned earlier, sorry if I,
If you get hard
oops. I mentioned earlier, the real way you create a brand is with actions, not ads. And so I'm going to walk through a bunch of examples. We did so many things, but you know, in the age of social media, obviously having an ambassador, influencers, whatever is huge. Cool. I don't know if any of you are surfers, but Carissa Moore is from Maui. She's a women's world champion surfer, gold medalist. She's now been the ambassador for CPB for 6 years. So like just, there is no more recognizable figure in Hawaii than Carissa Moore. We did some really cool stuff. We completely remodeled the headquarters. And again, I'm spending a lot of money here, but take the lessons and apply it to your scale of business. We created a one-of-a-kind piece of art that I have to show you because it's just so cool. That now became, it's actually in the Hawaii Art Tour Guide. It's now one of the stops in the Hawaii Art Tour Guide, and you'll see why in just a second.
The tubes that you see and hear that are mimicking the sound of waves are actually connected to real-time data connecting to buoys that are located throughout the Hawaiian island.
When the wave data arrives at the installation, the system interprets it by generating different movement patterns, which are replicated by the motors of the rain sticks.
So you get the idea. You know, it's really cool wave. By the way, Kim, who is the woman that was featured in this this little video, she was my VP of brand, and now she is the CMO of a $4 billion company. One of the coolest things about my job is I get to train people on how to do. My formula is not rocket science. It's just doing it with taste, doing it with style. It's so awesome to see people move on to bigger and better things. All right. And then one of the biggest actions we took, so a problem that the business had in Hawaii, they had a very old customer base. We wanted to reach a much younger audience. We launched a new product called Shaka, and we did a lot of cool things. We gave away a lot of merch and, you know, a bunch of actions. We created something called the Shaka Crew. So we basically did a deal with every influencer in Hawaii to launch this product, and we let them tell our story. And so I'll just show you one example of, you know, these influencers. What's cool about letting others tell your story is they do it in ways that you can't pull off. And so in this case, like one of our influencers was a breakdancer, and this is like what they posted, but it has 0 words in it, but it's still pretty darn cool. So you get the idea that you know, he's telling the story in a way we could never tell, reaching people we could never reach with this youthful new brand. All right, back to our litmus test. So I walked you through a case study. Can you imagine what Shaka sneakers would look like? Well, I can. In fact, we did create some. These are not them. These are AI generated. But again, I would wear these. Like you get the vibe of the brand. You can imagine how it would translate to other categories. All right, results. So we did all this fun, fluffy marketing stuff. But the real goal of any brand is to drive sales at the end of the day. Like I don't have a job very long as a CMO if sales aren't going the right direction. Spending money is fun, but it just doesn't last long if it's not translating. I will tell you that if you're a marketing geek like me, you'll never see results like this in your career. I will never see results like this again in my career. There's the top level measure of a brand is what's called unaided top of mind awareness. It means I go to you and I say, name a bank in Hawaii, and all we're listening for is the first bank they name. Before we launched our campaign, CPB was the 4th largest bank in Hawaii, which doesn't mean a whole lot, with 6% unaided awareness. 9 months later, after launching this campaign, it was 24% top of mind awareness. So we quadrupled it and took market share from all of the competitors in Hawaii. Absolute home run. And it was all because of the things you saw, that simple formula that we applied. More importantly, related to sales, you guys remember the PPP loan program? This was all going on during the pandemic. This little bank in Hawaii was #1 in the nation in PPP loans for market share within its own state, beating out like JP Morgan, Bank of America in their home states. So just incredible results. It was a once in a lifetime opportunity, but hopefully that helps illustrate that simple formula, 1, 2, 3, figure out the thing that makes your company special. In this case, radical humanity, crank it up to 11 in everything that you do, and then tell your story or let others tell your story. All right, home stretch. I wanted to, this has all been a pretty high level, and I wanted to leave you guys with some tactical things that you can start doing tomorrow to build your businesses. These are the 5 things I'm most obsessed about right now, and they're all pretty modern tactics. So #1 is do things that don't scale. I mean, you might have heard this. Anyone from Silicon Valley, Gina, you've heard this before. Do things that don't scale. A quick story. So I'm a big fan of a little boutique brand in Telluride, Colorado called Jagged Edge Mountain Gear. They make custom outdoor gear that's really cool. It's handmade in Colorado. And I've been buying stuff for 20 years from them. I noticed on social media, they posted a picture of a really cool wallet that they had made from scrap material that was left over. And I messaged them on Instagram and I said, hey, I'd like to buy one of those wallets. Those are really cool. Never heard back from them. And 2 days later, I get this in the mail. They just sent me a wallet. And it's handwritten by he just said Kevin. Didn't even put my I don't think he knew my last name. And that doesn't scale at all, right? But how do you think that made me feel as a customer, right? And so when I say do things that don't scale, you see these things and they're nice to talk about, but often the pushback I get is, but I'm too busy. I have thousands of customers. How do I do things that don't scale for thousands of customers? And I would push back on that by saying, if Elon can do it, you can do it. One of my friends, Barrett, bought a Tesla Model Y recently, and he posted on Twitter that he used the full self-driving to get home. Elon Musk himself said, cool. Well, how do you think that made Barrett feel? And again, Elon can't do this for everybody, but if you do it for enough, word starts getting out that you actually care about your customers, right? So that's tactic #1, do things that don't scale. So think about what's something, it's like a personal touch you could add to your product or service that doesn't scale, but would win customers for life. Second one is build a recycling. I'm kind of obsessed with the idea of recycling now, and maybe it's just an old idea that I've repackaged, but the basic idea here is rather than creating your own ads, your own creative, let people do that for you, and then just, if you're gonna spend money, pay to recycle that content. It's actually a great way to use old media. So my latest rebranding project was for a company called Embark. Another boring, for some reason I get stuck in these boring industries, but management consulting, but it's a fast growing they do things very different. And so we actually, to launch the brand, we bought a full page ad in the Wall Street Journal, which on the surface seems like the dumbest thing you can ever imagine. Who reads the Wall Street Journal anymore? And it's that's not the future, obviously. But we bought this full page ad, not because we were excited about how this ad would perform, but because the Wall Street Journal brings credibility and gravitas. And so we took that ad and we recycled it online. And so some guy who I don't even know posted about that he saw our ad. He got the Wall Street Journal. He's like, holy cow, what's this company doing? They're saying consulting is dead, but they're a consulting company. So we've put paid ad dollars to recycle his, and which he loved, of course. But let somebody else tell your story. We also, to 1,000 customer prospects, we sent coffins with a copy of the Wall Street Journal in it. That's a physical way of recycling. And so you can think of all sorts of ways, like that Le Creuset post earlier. Le Creuset should put ad dollars behind that and test it and see if that performs, because it's often an ad will perform better if it's written by one of your customers, not you. Idea #3, be polarizing. This is probably if you guys run small businesses or you're a solopreneur, if your indifference is death for branding, if you're a small company, you don't have the dollars to put behind ads to get awareness. You need to focus on your core customer, understand who they are, and basically don't care about anybody else. And a great example of this that's actually somewhat controversial is Black Rifle Coffee. You guys heard of that? Black Rifle Coffee is nothing special in terms of coffee. It's just run-of-the-mill coffee beans. They built a $100 million business on the back of a brand that was built around military, guns, MAGA, all this stuff. Powerful, right? So some people absolutely hate it just because of the brand, but the customers that love it really love it. They buy $100 million worth of coffee a year. So this quote here is from a friend of mine who's a branding guru, Krish Menon. He said, if you want people to love your brand, you have to be okay with some people hating it. Like death is trying to be all things to all people. So don't be afraid to be polarizing. Harley Davidson is the classic case study in this. I'm not sure how polarizing they are anymore. Like middle-aged dads are driving Harleys now. But you know, the formula there is deeply understand who your customers are and who they aren't. Build a tribe of customers. Like it's all about community. So if you want, Gina, you're going to present on community at 12:30. Like community is the future, right? Building communities of customers, and don't care what others think, which is easier said than done. Idea number 4, you guys probably do a lot of marketing on social media. Don't sleep on X. Like everybody likes to hate on X, or formerly Twitter. We like Instagram, we like TikTok. It's more visual, it's more fun. You have influencers have tens of millions of followers. I'm telling you, X is an untapped platform. CPMs on X are like 60 to 80%. So your ads don't even have to perform as well because the CPMs are so much lower. And there's a thing we refer to on X called the 10-to-1 rule. You might see an influencer on X that has like, let's say 50,000 followers. That's the equivalent of 500,000 followers on Instagram. Because of the nature of the platform, it's more thought-based. And so the followings are much more engaged than on other platforms. And so everybody ignores X influencers. And I'll use myself as an example. I'm a very, very minor influencer on X. And just for fun every year, I publish a holiday gift guide for impossible men. Basically, like if you need a gift, buy a gift for a man who's impossible to buy for, here's the things I like this year. And my little bitty account for this post got 344,000 views. And I did some tracking this year. I don't get paid for any of this, but I did some tracking. Best I can figure, I drove about $100,000 in sales. And I have a tiny little account. As a result of this, and this is the best part of it, I have 2 teenage girls. And now brands are sending me stuff in the mail. And my girls are like, what the hell is going on? Like, how did my 54-year-old dad become like an influencer? Like, I got a pair of boots in the mail. I got a belt. The other day, I got like some leather goods. It's pretty cool. All right, last idea, and then we're done. This is, has anybody ever heard of the 1,000 True Fans idea? You have to be a little older to remember this. It's an essay that was written by a guy named Kevin Kelly back in 2008. This QR code will take you to the essay. And he was way ahead of his time. Like when he wrote this essay, what he said actually wasn't true at the time, but now it is true. His basic idea was like, look, if you have 1,000 people who are rabid about whatever you do, you can build an incredible business. And he was mostly speaking to artists. Like there's actually an artist in Baby Bathwater, Candace, who's built her whole business around this model. You don't need a huge customer base to have a really nice business. And one of my favorite examples is, are any of you old enough to remember a band called the Verve Pipe? They had that, who can name like their big one-hit wonder? Nobody? It was a while back. It was like I don't even, like 15, 20. It was called The Freshman. I'm gonna play the song for you so you can remember it. It's a banger.
I cannot remember what made us think that we were wise and we never got.
Ring a bell? All right, cool. So the lead singer, so Verve Pipe, like a lot of one-hit wonders, they blew up. Like the band exploded. And Brian Vander Ark, who's the lead singer, basically followed the 1,000 True Fans model. He started doing, I think he called it like backyard concert series. Literally fans, he had an email list, and fans would pay him, I think it was like $3,000 plus expenses. He'd fly in and do a freaking concert in your backyard. And I went to one of those concerts in Dallas. A friend of mine actually did it because he was a huge fan. And Brian, for several years, made a really good living just traveling around, hanging out with families and doing these like little solo concerts. So he made a living because he just had like 1,000 people who were really crazy about his music. And so the last thing I'll say is I'm actually following this model now. So I'm like, I sort of retired a while back, but I still am very passionate about business, as hopefully you can tell. And I'm dabbling in a new business in the men's health space. So I'm starting a new business in men's health, and I'm just piloting it right now. But on the back of my little Twitter following, which is like 70,000 followers, I've built a 77,000 person email list that I never email. Like I haven't even used it. But I did use it when I pre-launched my new product, and I had 700 customers sign up saying, yes, I want to try this as a pilot customer. I mean, the business, we launched it last month. It's profitable in month 1, purely because of the 1,000 True Fans idea, right? And now the question is, can we scale it from here? So anybody has great ideas, let's talk later. So that's the fifth idea. So that's it. Hopefully there was at least one thing in this presentation that made you think a little bit different about branding, or maybe a tactic you can use to build your own brand, like starting tomorrow. And I think we have a little bit of time, so I'd love to take some questions if anybody has. It can be personal, business, provocative, offensive, anything. Bring it on. Yes?
When you've done these kinds of rebrands, what have you found to be the biggest obstacle or challenge?
Being bold. That's an easy one, especially within big companies. You remember the thing like.
What are some of the things that you heard, just even in that example of CPB, people being afraid, or what were you up against?
Yeah, it was an interesting one because I don't know, like Hawaiian culture is very. I learned a lot about Hawaiian culture. It's a very fear-based culture for a lot of reasons that have to do with history, and they're very, very, very conservative, and so data is usually the best thing to use to support it. So it's usually not enough when I come into a boardroom. Like I did another rebrand for a company called Mr. Cooper. It's a $5 billion mortgage, another boring industry, mortgage. Boring industries pay very well, by the way. But, and the boardroom that I had to pitch Mr. Cooper to was 65-year-old white men, crusty old mortgage guys. And like, here's me just like pitching all these crazy, like scared the shit out of them. But one thing I always do is, I didn't get into this, but all of the work is heavily rooted in research. We spend a lot of time with customers, and there's nothing more powerful than a customer saying, this is awesome, like this is amazing, this feels authentic. But even then, you have to, there has to be desire at the top. If the CEO is not on board with making bold moves, it's a non-starter. It's never gonna happen. So when I come in to do a project, that's like the number one thing I make sure of, is like the CEO actually has the guts to do interesting things. And to be honest, like most don't. And even if they say they do, they still may not have it.
And I selfishly would ask you, if this type of a product was yours, do you feel testimonials from people that are here are helpful in terms of the marketing potential, like kind of the individual customer? Testimonials of people in the hotel or at the beach club or in here.
Yeah.
Truth be told, I'm one of the hosts. I'm one of the on-site partners and owner of the hotel. So Hollis has been nice enough to let us come to the content sessions. And it's really, really interesting because we're at that point where we want to now scale versus me talking to somebody, having a personal connection with them, and then they end up becoming that 1,000 people. We're really lucky we have a 50% repeat thing here.
Yes.
And how to kind of scale that versus the one-on-one interaction.
Yeah. So this is going to be awesome. First of all, Hollis said amazing things about you. So you've got something remarkable about what you're doing here. And I'll tell you a funny story. Right before I walked over here to do this presentation, the what do they call them, housekeepers now, maid, whatever, had cleaned my room. And I've never seen a room cleaned like this in my life. I sent a picture to my wife. The housekeeper hung, I travel with a lot of baseball caps. So the housekeeper hung my 4 baseball caps on a hook. She hung my hoodie on a hook. It was pristine. And it was a wow experience for me. And basically, like, the litmus test for remarkable is wow. Like, and I was talking to somebody last night about this. They were asking me, like, how do you create like a remarkable product? And like, are your customers saying wow is the only litmus test for it? So I understand what you were asking about. Testimonials are everything. That's the whole basis of branding, is talking to customers, find out what do they think? Like, what do they think is really exceptional about what you do? And then you can double down, triple down on that. Like, I'm just making this up on the fly, but let's say that, like, because it's clear from me being here, and I'm not just saying this, like, the service of this hotel is phenomenal. Like, the steak last night was outstanding. Like, everything's great. Like, over the top service, there's maybe some like brand idea there that you like. We like, yes, it's a nice hotel. We got a beach club, all that, but a lot of hotels have that. What people appreciate more than ever these days is like genuinely great service. And it's clear that starts from the top. Like, I don't know about you guys agree. Like, I can already tell just being here 24 hours, like, it starts at the top and you can feel it all the way down. So you've already done the hard part, which is doing something really remarkable. Now you just have to figure out how to embed it in everything you do and tell the world about it. Hollis.
What your systematic kind of process when you come in as an outside force to find out from the customers what they think about a company with history, because I think sometimes the CEO being bold has all the stories what led a company to a certain stage.
Yeah.
So when you're trying to extract that bold word and that thing that they're going to do,
Yeah.
The data I assume comes from asking customers questions.
Yeah, and I'll take it even a step further. Where I thought you were going to go with it was, what if customers hate your company? So I did a rebrand at this company that's now called Mr. Cooper. Before it was called Nation Star Mortgage, like the most forgettable name ever. Customers didn't even know. They would say, like, what do you think about Nation Star? They're like, who? I never heard of it. And they've been paying their mortgage to us for like 10 years. And not only that, when they did recognize it, they actually hated the company. It had a history of providing terrible service. And so in that case, sometimes you have to manufacture the remarkable thing, like the wow thing. And that's where actions, not ads. Like, you can do all the advertising in the world for a shitty company and it's still going to be shitty. You may get some customers, but you're going to have to force feed it. What you want to do is create pull by doing some actions. And so we spent, in that case, we spent $100 million revamping the technology and had the best app in the industry. And customers start noticing these things. But early on, like, you have to be bold, because at Mr. Cooper, we did a funny thing. When we launched the brand, a lot of people hated it. Back to this idea of being polarized. Like, I would get handwritten notes from elderly customers, like saying, like, who is this retard that did the rebrand of this company? And we actually did a feature internally called Mean Tweets. The Mean Tweets thing on Kimmel, where I read all the mean tweets that people had published, like saying, like, whoever was behind this brand should be fired immediately. And it's kind of because, and some of that you joke, like, you don't want to piss off all your customers, but you're going to be a little bit polarizing. But it is like it's a gut check, right? So, like, you do the research, which we did. We knew we were onto something when we tested some of the ideas behind the actions we had in mind for Mr. Cooper. You test it, you take that data to the board. In this case, multi-billion-dollar public company. They're not interested in gambling the future of the company on some crazy dude's idea. But you pitch it, and hopefully hopefully ultimately it's the CEO, because the board's going to align behind the CEO 99 times out of 100. And if the CEO says, this is something I want to do, we're trying to take the company a different direction, there's an art to that. So, like, the reason I love marketing is it's part science and part art. And I won't claim to be the artist. I'm like the curator, and I hire really smart people. You met Krish. So in every rebrand I've ever done, I work with a guy named Krish Menon. He was like Steve Jobs, one of Steve Jobs' right-hand man in launching some of the original Apple products. He worked with Mark Zuckerberg on Facebook. He's a genius when it comes to this stuff. And you listen to customers, they don't give you the words, they give you the ideas, and then you put together the words. So when it comes to research, everybody likes to do surveys because they're easy and they're very measurable. I'm kind of old school. I like to do focus groups, because a really skilled focus group moderator will pull stuff out of customers that they never would have thought to say on their own, like on a survey. So I love the qualitative research more than anything, like 6-person focus groups. And by the way, these can be done for free. Like, you can do it, you can spend, what I love about marketing is, like those ads I mentioned that cost $10,000. I've created ads that cost $3 million that were kind of crappy. And I've created ads that cost $10,000 that were home runs. It's like, the beauty of marketing is you can be clever with very little money. And so pull in 6 random customers and just sit down as the CEO and talk to them and say, like, what do you think about our service? What do you think about this? What do you think about this? Any ideas? And often there'll be one thing that, like, somebody says, and it's like, oh, wow, I'd never even thought about that. Like in Mr. Cooper example, the reason we landed on Mr. Cooper, which is an odd choice in a name, is because someone in a focus group said something like, man, I wish I just had like a friend in the business, like a human face I could actually talk to. So we decided to build the whole company around being the face of your home loan. I hate B2B stuff. Now, my last gig at, I'm only kind of joking. Consumer is so much more fun. But my last gig, that Embark company where we did the Wall Street Journal, that was a B2B sale. But it's kind of the same process, because you just have to know who your customer is. In this case, We sold mostly to CEOs and CFOs and chief accounting officers, and which are people I have trouble relating to. But it's the same thing. Just bring those people in and talk to them. The same exact. In fact, I will say the big opportunity in B2B is most marketing is really shitty in B2B. In consumer marketing, you get a lot of talented marketers who are doing cool stuff. But in B2B, it's usually pretty like sterile and lame. So it's sometimes even bigger opportunity. Like would McKinsey ever say consulting is dead? No, they don't have they don't have that attitude. Questions? Maybe one more and then we'll wrap it up. Yeah, I mean, there are people who do that for a living. And so like I happen to have a friend named David who is just a super talented focus group moderator. And it sounds like a lowbrow sort of job, but actually there's a lot of skill to it, like having years of experience doing it. And then there are also companies who are skilled at recruiting the panels or like the people that actually come in. I mean, it's like it's been done the exact same way for like 100 years. Like literally, like you give someone a gift certificate to Chili's, they come in and they spend 30 minutes with you and they tell you what they think. And it's amazing. Like, I don't know, I just think I'm more interested in what customers have to say than what the executives at a company have to say. Like executives think they know a lot, but I generally find that they actually are pretty disconnected from their customers. But it could be as simple as like either randomly, or if there's a certain type of customer you want to talk to, like your top tier customers or people who haven't converted, whatever, or do multiple focus groups, but just like email them and say, hey, if we gave you $50, would you come in and just talk to us for 45 minutes? And then, if you can't hire a moderator, just do it yourself. Just ask questions that you're, as the founder or CEO, that you're genuinely curious about. And I'll leave you with this. Like, I would bet if, I'm guessing a lot of you like run businesses or have your own business. I would bet if you did just one focus group of 6 customers, you would walk away from that going, damn, I should have done that like 5 years ago. Like I learned so much from that 1 hour that I can apply directly to my business. Cool. All right, thanks guys. This was fun. Yeah.